Hello everyone, welcome to Kritigri FM, which is going to be a podcasty thing where I kind of discuss entertainment-related topics. So not like the Weekly Waypoint where I talk about my week, but more like a topic that I thought about regarding video games or entertainment in specific. And it's not going to be a regular thing, it's just going to be as and when they come to me. So for an example, today we're going to talk about if you could only play 10 video games, a selection of 10 video games for the rest of your entire life, which video games would you choose? Sometimes you see tweets like these circling around, and usually it's 4, because on Twitter you can only really have like 4 images, so people tend to just go with 4 for the default. But I like the idea of 10 because it gives you a nice diversity of games that you can select. And it's also worth mentioning that this isn't going to be a list of my top 10 favorite games necessarily. They're going to contain some of my favorite games for sure, but it's going to be more strategically chosen for like the kinds of games that they are. This isn't a stop time desert island situation. You can choose perpetually updating online games for these as well, just with a caveat that they might shut down at any time and then you're down a game. So with that being said, in no particular order, in fact, I'll do it in reverse order of how they came to me. So the last one that came to me then would be Animal Crossing City Folk, purely because, while I love New Horizons, it does not necessarily contain the essence of what I love about Animal Crossing at its core. I mean, it does, but there is something about it which is lost in sequelization in a way that I can't quite explain. It might simply be nostalgia. And you might think, but Christian, City Folk is more of a limited game compared to New Horizons, in that New Horizons has more content. But all I can think of when I think of New Horizons is that feeling we all got when they stopped updating it, and you kind of feel like you'd done everything already. And while you're going to get that in other Animal Crossings for sure as well, it does just make me look at all Animal Crossings under that same lens of, it is a limited experience. You're not going to want to play this one single game every single day for the rest of your life, but when you do want to go back and experience an Animal Crossing game, for me, that is going to be City Folk. I prefer the fantasy of moving into a village, and kind of establishing yourself there as a villager, and not necessarily its mayor like you do in New Leaf. And I prefer a village to like an island like you get in New Horizons. And I think the attitude of some of the villagers there is a little bit more diverse as well than what we see in later titles. They're not always super friendly, sometimes they're a little bit mean, not necessarily as mean as the earliest titles, but I feel like it's a good middle ground. It has my favourite soundtrack of all the Animal Crossing games, it just has my favourite vibes. The one thing that would irritate me would be the grass, losing the grass when you run around. That is, if I was to allow myself to mod this game with one mod, it would be to make it so that grass never disappears when you run on it, because oh my god, there's a reason why that didn't come back for later games. If you were an avid enjoyer of Animal Crossing City Folk, it would only take a few months of playing the game before your village was just a mud pile. It was just dirt everywhere. It did not look good, and your only counter to this was to just never sprint anywhere on grass, and that would take, maybe it's just because I played this when I was a kid, but that would take some amount of self-discipline. But yeah, when I was looking at my overall lineup of games I had chosen, I was looking at what was missing, and I thought a game where I can just go and have a little simulated life and have little villager friends, and it's cute and it's fun. And I don't have a farming game anywhere on this list, so some people might have replaced this with like Stardew Valley or something, but my roots are more in just the village life sim than it is in the farming style game. Anyway, next up is... There's a few games here where they may or may not be cheats, so you have to let me know how you think. I will give you an alternative if you think it's a cheat. But my next game is Halo the Master Chief Collection. You might be like, whoa, 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 whoa. That is 5 Halo games. You have just taken up 5 positions on the list. But the reason why I regard it as one game specifically is for the multiplayer, because whenever I play multiplayer in that game, for the most part, I just tick all of the Halos, and I just play whichever match comes up. And I don't know that I have a favourite multiplayer Halo experience due to that. Like, there are benefits and drawbacks to all of them, but if I was to have to choose, probably Halo 3 but it's very close next to Halo Reach and Halo 2 Anniversary. But then when it comes to campaigns, my view is a little bit different. I'm a sucker for the original Halo 1 classic campaign. I know it's not, the best fundamentally in terms of game design or whatever, but there's something about it that I find so quaint. So yeah, my choice for this entry is Halo MCC, but if you want me to narrow it down to one single Halo entry, oh boy, I guess I would choose Halo 3 for the multiplayer, and then also, all the campaigns are fun, so there you go. My next choice, or I guess the choice I made before this, because I'm doing this in reverse order of what I thought of them, not that it really matters, is RuneScape. And RuneScape is not the only MMO on this list. You might think, oh, Christian's probably cast his net afield and tried to choose one game from each genre. No, I am someone who sinks about half of their collective gaming time, if not more, into various different MMOs. I love them so much that I'm going to have to include multiple on this list, and it's still going to pain me to say goodbye to another decent chunk of them. In fact, I'll get this out of the way before you notice it's missing. Final Fantasy XIV is not on this list, and that might just be because of when I'm making this list. From where I've sat, I have played through Final Fantasy XIV's main story quest all the way up to Endwalker and through the Endwalker patches, and I feel like I've had a complete experience. That's something that Dawn Trail is willing to change, so if you ask me again in a couple of years, I might put Final Fantasy XIV on this list. But out of all the MMOs, Final Fantasy XIV, while it definitely does have a really good MMO live service game side to it, out of all of them, it feels like the most completed experience to me, and the one I would be the most capable of leaving behind if I absolutely had to. But RuneScape, and I will have to choose RuneScape 3 over old school RuneScape because those are two separate games. There's no cheat codes for that one. RuneScape is quite a unique experience in terms of MMO, in terms of how it handles, there's no classes in that game. It's all based around skills, and it's quite grindy in some ways, but it's really nice as like a second screen game while you're doing something else, like listening to a podcast or through an audiobook or something, and there's nothing quite like it, and I feel like there's still so much I've yet to do in that game. And while I'll admit the future for RuneScape doesn't necessarily look the brightest, I would definitely get the itch to play it again, and if I could never play it again, I would just I wouldn't go mad. Let's not get overzealous here, but I would be very upset if I could not go back and play RuneScape at any point in my life ever again. Next up's another cheat code, Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection, because that is one EXE, damn it, that is one video game, except if I had to choose, it would be Assassin's Creed 2, because of course Assassin's Creed 2 is the best one. I just like the full Ezio story. But yeah, I love the Assassin's Creed series so much. I also, if I had space, I would have put Assassin's Creed Odyssey on here because it's a different kind of Assassin's Creed title that I also love to death. But there was limited room, obviously, and not everyone could make it onto the raft. But yeah, Assassin's Creed 2 is one of those games that I've perfected multiple times and would be happy to just sit down and perfect again. It itches the stealth element of genre that's missing elsewise on this list. Well, actually, you could make an argument. But yeah, to me, Assassin's Creed 2 is timeless, and it is a story that I enjoy revisiting every few years, and it is a gameplay loop that I enjoy visiting every few years, and I don't really have much else to say on that front. About halfway through this list, I realised I would need to include a Pokemon game, because Pokemon is such a giant aspect of my gaming life, when I'm actually in the middle of caring about it, because I go through hyperfixations, I go through obsessions, and Pokemon is definitely one of those. The question is, which entry in the series? This is the one that has me stumped. I have not written it down in my notes yet. I do not have an answer yet, so we're going to talk through it right here and right now. The problem is, the earlier you go in the Pokemon series, the less Pokemon you have to play around with. Furthermore, the way the games are designed, the later games have more replayability, in my opinion, than the earlier games. Their endgame is a lot more fleshed out. I'm thinking specifically, controversial opinion incoming, of Pokemon Sword. I love Pokemon Sword, and I don't care what people say. With its DLC included, there are so many Pokemon. Obviously, they're not all included. I know I was literally just talking about that, but there are so many Pokemon included, and so many fun ways to find them. But I think throughout the entirety of this series, it's a problem, right? If you can only choose one Pokemon game to play for the rest of your life, what would it be? Because replayability, the way I enjoy replaying the Pokemon franchise is playing different games in the series. My favorite outright Pokemon experience, like in terms of a campaign, is probably Soul Silver. So maybe I should just stop overthinking it and choose Soul Silver. And you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. Maybe I won't enjoy replaying it over and over and over again, but if I have to choose a Pokemon game and none of them are going to be good in terms of replayability, then I might as well choose the one that I enjoyed the most the first time I ever played it, and that would be Pokemon Soul Silver. And I could keep myself busy by, I don't know, going after a living dex, which is something I've never done before. 4 generations of Pokemon in there, favourite visual style, nice big long campaign, wham, bam, done it. Next up on the list, I thought to myself, I'm going to need a racing game in there, and this one's difficult because there are so many different subgenres of racing game, but I've only picked one racing game for the entirety of this list. It is not a kart racing game. It is not a vehicular combat oriented racing game. It is not a driving simulator, or what I would refer to as a boring racing game, which I enjoy, such as Gran Turismo or Forza Motorsport. No, it's Forza Horizon 4. And I am a little bit hesitant on that because every now and again I boot up Forza Horizon 4 and my main issue is I've kind of done everything. But, you know, if I could only play one racing game ever again for the rest of my life, it would be Forza Horizon 4 because, you know, I could wipe my save and start over and there would be plenty to do once again, plenty of cars to collect. Could race online. I enjoy the racing experience. I enjoy the setting. I enjoy the music. It contains elements I like of, you know, how I enjoyed racing games in my youth, like Midnight Club, and stuff like that. The kind of open world roaming arcadey racing game, I think, is a good middle ground to find for the only racing game I would ever be able to play again in my life. I just realized I've missed a subgenre. Oh no, not a subgenre, an entire genre. I knew this would happen. I knew that I would get halfway through this video and remember a genre that I forgot about. I am now on the raft. I am looking back at the mainland and I'm going, no, I forgot about Diablo. Okay, you know what? I think I can actually axe one of the final games I've got on this list. So we're going to get rid of... Oh god, which one? We're going to get rid of Elder Scrolls Online. I am so sorry. I will feel the itch to play you for the rest of my life, and I will never be able to scratch that itch. But we need Diablo, and here's the interesting part. We need Diablo 3 on this raft with us. You might be thinking, Christian, hang on a minute. What about Diablo 4? I really want to love Diablo 4, I really do. I like the story in the main campaign. I like the world. I like the classes. I like their approach to class design. I die of boredom every time I boot up Diablo 4. I can't stand Diablo 4's endgame, and it's taken me a long time to come to terms with this opinion of mine because I am someone who has sunk hundreds of hours into its predecessor. I love Diablo 3 so much, and I know that there are going to be people, well, I don't know that there are going to be people, but there might be people listening who feel this way about Diablo 2 and hate Diablo 3. I know there's a lot of those people out there. I have gone back and played Diablo 2, but it's the same problem as going back and playing Morrowind. When my first Elder Scrolls game was Skyrim, I wasn't brought up with those game philosophies. I didn't nurture those skills required to be good at that kind of game, or have that hardened skin to not give up when I die and lose all my items and have to go back and collect those items and it's in the middle of a giant pack of mobs, you know. As you can tell, I have tried Diablo 2 and it's not the one that I love. It's great for you if you do love it, I'm not saying you're wrong. But I love Diablo 3 and I've spent hundreds of hours in Diablo 3's endgame, and something I've been grappling with for the last half year or so in the back of my head is I have that itch to go back and play Diablo, but it's not Diablo 4 I want to play, it's Diablo 3, and I'm definitely overthinking it, and it doesn't matter. I should just go back and play Diablo 3, and you know what? I will. I am taking it with me on my raft. I am deleting the Elder Scrolls Online, and the reason I'm deleting the Elder Scrolls Online from this list is because the one that entry I have next to it is Skyrim, and I could justify them both being on this list because they are two different types of games. And the reason I pushed ESO off the raft instead of Skyrim is because one of the aspects I really enjoy in ESO is that, weirdly, I don't know if other people feel the same way, but I feel like the endgame itemization of ESO is weirdly similar to Diablo 3's. Especially in terms of running dungeons and grabbing, like, loads of loot and that feeling of just having lots of loot. You know, Diablo 3 has more loot that drops, of course, over the course of a game and stuff, but I've always put ESO and Diablo 3's itemization and endgame a little bit similarly in that regard. But yeah, I could make do with Diablo 3 and Skyrim without ESO, but I would miss the wider world of the Elder Scrolls that is told of in ESO. I'm taking this really seriously, and it's a hypothetical. So yeah, just one more time to clarify, ESO is not on this list of 10 games that I have to choose if I want to play them. I don't know how to phrase this. I've clearly come up with a way in the title of this episode. If I could only play 10 games for the rest of my life, these would be them, I guess. Is that a good title? I don't know. We're not done yet, though. I mentioned Skyrim. Obviously, open world, single player, RPG experience. A lot of people are going to choose The Witcher 3. I'm choosing Skyrim. I did not play Skyrim when it first came out in 2011. I tried it a few times, probably from 2013 onwards, and I could not get into it. And I would do Bleak Falls Barrow, and I would go, meh. And I would do Bleak Falls Barrow, I'd go, maybe next time. And I would get distracted, I would go to Riften, I would get distracted and leave, and eventually I sat myself down and said, Christian, you are playing this goddamn game, and I did. I 100% perfected, in terms of achievements anyway, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and it is still a game today that I could boot up and play and have new experiences in, and I think that is a solid reason for it to be on a list of games, a limited list of games that I could only ever play again. I really need to figure out this phrasing. So yeah, I don't think Skyrim is a surprise to anyone, but there it is. We have 2 games left, and I forgot to talk about one of them, so this is no longer in perfect reverse order of when these games occurred to me. I've yet to hit the action platformer genre, and you may or may not know, but I'm a huge fan of a Ratchet and Clank series, and I would be so sad if I could never play another Ratchet and Clank game, so what would I choose? For me, it has to be Ratchet and Clank 2, Locked and Loaded, as it's called here in the UK. I know Ratchet and Clank 3 is the preferred game in the PS2 trilogy, and having played through the trilogy several times, there have been times when I have preferred the third game as well. But I just have too much attached to the second game, too many memories, too much favoritism. I could load up Ratchet and Clank 2 and play through it front to back, start to finish. Probably take me like 7 to 8 hours, I don't know. I could just do that at any point, drop of a hat, tell me, Christian, go play Ratchet and Clank 2. I would always be down, because that game is the perfect blend of platforming and third person shooter, but it's also got these fun bombastic weapons if you've never played it. You've got like the mini turret glove and the bouncer, which spawns mini grenades when it hits people, and all these fun concepts, and you can upgrade the guns, and all of these things are built upon in Ratchet and Clank 3. You can upgrade them more incrementally with more levels. The levels are more tightly designed, as kind of like there's always cover and there's always groups of enemies in certain ways, instead of Ratchet and Clank 2, which was a little bit more of a hybrid between 3 and the first game, which was more of a platformer. But I think I love that hybrid style too much, and I love the aesthetic of Ratchet and Clank 2, and you know, the Bogon Galaxy and Megacorp and the planets like Planet Oozla and the Mactar Nebula level as well. Oh, it's embedded in my conscience. It is engraved onto my soul, that video game, and I could not part with it. Something I've always wanted to do on my YouTube channel is do a playthrough of Ratchet and Clank 2, but PS2's for the hobbyist with not much money, PS2s are kind of hard to set up capture for and very difficult to emulate, so Yeah, one day, one day. Technically, I could actually capture the PS3 HD version of that game, so it's not all technical issues. Some of it is just, you know, how much do I want to make the content around it versus just play through the game again. But I would love to one day. So finally, the final game, the very first game which appealed to me, the first game that I thought I absolutely cannot go without if I can only play 10 games for the rest of my life, and we're allowing online service games to continue even at the risk of them being shut down one day and losing a game, is of course World of Warcraft. And that's partially because I'm currently playing through 2 versions of that game. And the cheat code applies here. It can be modern WoW, it can be classic WoW, it can be limited time event WoW. But World of Warcraft is the game I have sunk the most amount of time into over the course of my entire life. It is easily thousands of hours, and I still have fun. I still get that itch of, I just want to go and make a new character and run them through all of these dungeons, or I want to make a new character and then take it slow and experience all of the story in one of these expansions, and I want to make a new character and have it be this character class combination and write this lore for their backstory. It is, similarly to Ratchet and Clank 2, ingrained in my very essence. And while there have been times when I've been like, Final Fantasy XIV is the better game, it's the better MMO, I can't see myself going back to WoW, you know, as I already mentioned, Final Fantasy XIV does feel like an experience that I have completed to an extent and can put to bed to an extent, despite the fact, you know, that's not me saying that there's not more hundreds of hours for me to play in Final Fantasy XIV, and I will go ahead and do that one day. So maybe this is partially just a product of the timing in which I'm making this list. Maybe if you asked me again in a few months, World of Warcraft would be nowhere to be seen on this list, but right now it is public enemy number 1 in terms of games that I would have to have with me if I only had 10 that I could play for the rest of my life. So yeah, this doesn't cover all genres that I enjoy, and I would be waving goodbye to a few, so it's worth mentioning. I didn't include any open world city sandbox games like GTA or Saints Row. I considered including Saints Row, but I've not really played through any of those in a while, and GTA Online hasn't really appealed to me in like half a decade at this point, so I think I'm safe to be like, I can fondly remember that in my past. That doesn't need to usurp anyone else's place on this raft. I don't know why I've settled on a raft as a metaphor. I clearly said we weren't going to a desert island. Strategy games are also missing, and while I've never been a big strategy game person, I would include Worms in that, and I love Worms, and I would miss being able to play Worms. I already mentioned there's a lot of subgenres of racing game. I nearly put RC Revenge Pro on here, which is an old PS2 kind of arcade slash vehicular combat racing game, which I really love and would miss. And over the coming days, like I'm going to be thinking about this for days, as I think about this going forwards, there's probably going to be games like Diablo where I'll be like, shit, I forgot to put that one on the list. But thankfully, we're not limited to 10 games that we can play for the rest of our lives. And in fact, one of the reasons I wanted to make this podcast episode specifically was because I was thinking about gaming and the wide breadth of video games to choose from, and how sometimes I'm just paralyzed by it. I sit here on a Friday afternoon on my day off and I think, what do I want to play? And I'm like, I don't know. There's too much to play. And because of that, I don't want to play anything, which sounds antithetical, but I know that a lot of people have felt the same way. And that's why I was thinking, like, you know, have you ever like gone through a period of your life where, for instance, you've been unable to afford the internet because of certain life circumstances, and therefore you're limited in what you want to play, and while 90% of you is going, that sucks, I can't play these games anymore, I didn't have these games downloaded, I will never be able to play these games again until my situation changes, 10% of you is going, oh, I like this actually. Now I can focus. Now I feel like I can really enjoy this selection of games in my life. And like I say, overall not a good situation to be in, but if you're trying to make the most of it, maybe that's a thought that occurs to you. It has to me in the past. So that was that. Let me know if you could only play 10 games, or if that's too much thinking, 5 games, 4 games, for the rest of your life, what games would you choose and why? You can do that I'm gonna upload this to my YouTube channel as a new kind of podcast series, but this is also available on Spotify and other podcast services, and I'll put a little Q&A thing where you can type your own answer in or whatever, or you can just, I don't know, tweet at me at Kritigri, Kritigri. I don't know why I spell it out for you. It is the name of this podcast. You already know how to spell Kritigri. It's Kritigri FM. Thank you for tuning into this little experiment. Let me know if you have any gaming topics as well you'd like me to discuss. Like, I don't know, I've got plenty of them. It's a weird thing to be doing because I do have a blog post where I could write about these topics as well, but sometimes I just want to ramble and talk about things as they come out of my face instead. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you in whatever I make next.